Hello everyone, my name is Laura, this is Culture Nonsense, and today I tried to get Pushkin in the frame for a tiny little bit. He's over here with his jingle bells, but he may run away like he usually does, so probably won't see him again. Anyway, today we are talking about how Elizabeth Holmes' testimony is wrapping up and the defense has wrapped its case. Before I start talking about that, I wanted to remind you all to subscribe to this channel if you're not already, like this video if you like it, and leave any comments or questions you have in the comments below. I am going to be making videos about Sunny's trial in January when that starts, and I also thought it would be fun maybe for people to guess in the comments how long jury deliberation will be. Like I said, today is Wednesday, December 8th when I'm filming, and the judge said that he doesn't think that jury deliberation will be until the 16th. So I thought we would play maybe Price is Right rules, whoever is closest without going over time to guess like how long the jury deliberates. It might be fun to give that person a prize. So if you would like to do that until December 16th, leave a comment below with how long you think jury deliberation will be, and whoever gets closest, I will award some kind of prize. I haven't figured out what it is yet. One thing that happened before testimony started this week was that Elizabeth Holmes' defense team tried to submit more documents, and the government got very upset about this, calling the move like a trial by ambush because they had no idea that they were going to try to present these documents. I believe some of them included emails to Jim Mattis and also some information about the pharmaceutical company GlaxoSmithKline GlaxoSmithKline PLC. I didn't hear anything about this in her testimony later on, so I didn't get confirmation about the judge ruling saying they weren't going to be allowed, but I assume that is the case because I don't believe they were brought up later on. Kicking things off, going back into the cross-examination on Tuesday, the government asked Elizabeth about Theranos' involvement with military contracts, and she maintained that she never said Theranos had any machines on medevacs. She said she never told potential investors or business partners that Theranos was actively in medical helicopters or actively being used by the military, even though from previous testimony we heard many investors say they were led to believe this. She agreed with Mr. Leach, the prosecutor, that no one at Theranos, including Sunny Balwani, told her they were being used by the military, and that it would have been wrong to tell potential investors this was the case. They were not used for clinical care on medevacs, she testified. Ms. Holmes said that she heard the testimony of these many investors who said they were led to believe that these devices were being used on medevacs, and she said she never told anyone they were being used on medevacs, and she said, "My testimony is I don't think I said that." The "I don't think I said that" or "I don't know" was a common refrain across the rest of her cross-examination. Pretty much she just denied remembering things, denied maybe having said things in the past. I don't think a lot of this cross-examination was really good for her, but I think it all comes down to whether or not the jury believes that she really didn't know some of these things were going on at the company, or if you believe that she's just lying now about not knowing or not remembering. Hi. One interesting thing that also happened on Tuesday was a discussion about Theranos' revenue projections for 2015 specifically, and how they were so sky high in comparison to how the company was actually doing. Elizabeth Holmes had virtually no explanation for why investors were shown a revenue projection for 2015 of nearly $1 billion when internally the revenues at the company were much, much lower. Testimony from Lisa Peterson, a representative from the DeVos family, was brought up again in regards to a revenue projection for $990 million for 2015. And Ms. Holmes said that the figure came from a financial model that was discussed with that investor, but she said that she didn't think she was the one who discussed it. There was a little bit of an interesting breakdown that Mr. Leach did at one point, pointing to, a projection of $40 million in 2015, for example, that was supposed to be from pharmaceutical contracts alone. The interesting thing is that Ms. Holmes agreed Theranos had no revenue from pharmaceutical contracts in 2014. So when she was asked how it would be possible to get to 40 million in 2015, she paused a little bit, stuttered, and finally answered that it could have been expected from a contract signed by GlaxoSmithKline the year previously, or rather further years previously. Then, in a pretty dramatic and I would say great move by the prosecution, Mr. Leach reminded Elizabeth Holmes about testimony from the former comptroller talking about how Theranos had no revenue from GlaxoSmithKline from 2007 to 2013. So he asked her year by year, did you have revenue from this year? No. This year? No. This year? No. So it seems that what she said was, kind of an outright lie, since they had no revenue from a period of 7 years. Elizabeth also conceded that many things in the Fortune article by Roger Parloff were misleading or incorrect, and she still sent this information off to investors. She did nothing to correct the record about these inaccuracies, and in fact, basically passed them off as truth by giving the information to investors, although she says she didn't purposely do that. She never purposely misled anyone. One specific example is the quote, "It currently offers more than 200 and is ramping up to offer more than 1,000 of the most commonly ordered blood diagnostic tests, all without the need for a syringe." Mr. Leach asked her if she believed that this was inaccurate information when the story came out, and she said, "I believe that now," suggesting that when the story came out, she might have thought differently. Okay. And remember I said when she emailed this article to investors, yeah, that email was brought up on screen for the jurors to see, and minutes earlier she said that she had no memory of forwarding this article to investors. So I think it's really great of the prosecution asking her, do you remember this? Did you do this thing? And she's saying, I don't know, I don't remember, and they have all of the actual evidence to show the jury. I just don't think it really looks good for her, because to say I don't know or I don't remember this many times and then be confronted with the evidence. I mean, sure, some of these things happened years ago, you might not remember, but a lot of these kind of pivotal events or things that she did, I'm sure she has some memory of, so she's just lying. It's really hard to prove that, though. Another interesting thing we learned about was that in October of 2014, there was a potential investor from BDT Capital Partners, and he was going to get his blood drawn at a Theranos testing site. And we saw this whole email chain of people inside Theranos trying to choreograph different scenarios of basically him not having a typical venous draw at one of their blood sites. They wanted to make sure that he would get a finger stick test. However, because there were so few tests that could actually run on the finger stick tests, as we know, they were doing venous draws. So there were all these contingency plans about, what if he gets this test? How are we going to make sure that they don't give him a venous draw? He can't contact customer service. And so trying to basically find all of these different avenues that they could intervene to make him think that this was regular operating procedure when really his blood test was extremely choreographed. One idea from an employee was to say that certain tests that they'd requested, couldn't be run. Another possible risk in a scenario that they mentioned was that if one of the representatives from this firm noticed that their receipt on the way out the door didn't include all of the blood tests that they ordered. And an email said that the worst case scenario would be if anyone from the group called customer support, like I said. This investment group ultimately passed on the Theranos investment after they were told that the Cleveland clinic had a business arrangement with Theranos, and they never sent their devices to review at this place. So I believe they thought that was a little bit fishy, and that's the reason why they didn't ultimately invest. Another point that was brought up by the prosecution, which I was really happy about, was going back to some of Elizabeth's earlier testimony when her defense was asking her questions. There was a report brought up by Ian Gibbons, and I believe I mentioned this in one of my videos, that a lot of the things in this report were all talking about, the potential that this device had, and Elizabeth was portraying it as if this was all immediate and that the Edison machine could perform any test, and this is what she believed the device could do in the moment. So like I mentioned, she said she believed the 4.0 could run any test. However, if you actually look at this report, there were many slides that were written in future tenses, several things listed as TBD. And Ms. Holmes said she understood it was the beginning, but stood by her earlier testimony that she believed the 4.0 series could do any blood test. She said there was still work to be done. This is something that I think she had to handle really delicately to act like she wasn't lying before, because it's pretty hard to look at this report and see all of these things talking about, this is to be determined, this is what we hope will happen, and say that I believed in that moment it could run any test, because I don't know how you could be someone as smart as Ms. Holmes portrayed herself to be and then look at this thing in the future tense and claim that it is talking about something that you currently have. So after the government finished its cross-examination, the defense had an option to question Elizabeth again. They tried to say that Theranos did not have a cash flow issue in 2013. If you guys remember, they had to pay back, I believe, $18.5 million from an insurance company that some deal didn't go through. And so at this time, it really, made an impact on their finances because they were burning through millions of dollars a week. The defense claims that they had $75 million coming from the Walgreens Alliance, so really they weren't that strapped for cash. However, I think, money coming at some point from a deal does not really guarantee that you're not strapped for cash in the moment. We jumped a little bit back into the Sonny and Elizabeth messages, but not a whole bunch. Just talking about how in certain exchanges, Elizabeth would have to try to calm Sonny down. We have an example here where he wrote, "Fundamentally, we need to stop fighting fires by not creating them." And then minutes later, she parodied his exact words back to them. And she said that sometimes she would do that to try to show him that she was listening and understanding so he wouldn't get frustrated with her. She also testified about how their breakup was a process, and I guess after they broke up and he left the company, sometimes he would show up certain places where she was. She also testified that she never got any money from the sale of their house, which, as I mentioned before, was split equally in that LLC 50-50. I think the reason why they were bringing up this process of the breakup with Sonny is because in earlier testimony, it seemed kind of like she did it relatively quickly. She moved out. It didn't seem like there was a prolonged period where they kind of got back together and, all of that. And that is, I would say, a little bit unusual for abuse victims or people who have a very controlling partner. That's not to say it could never happen, but I think the prosecution was kind of saying, well, you're portraying Sonny as having this complete power and hold over you, but you were able to break up with him so quickly. So I think Elizabeth is trying to rebut that a little bit and say, it was hard to leave him. He showed up different places and, the breakup wasn't just a one and done thing. At the very end of her testimony, she reiterated that she never tried to mislead investors or patients and said that even though she was in charge of the company, there were some things that she wasn't fully aware of. As I said before, at different points, it's a little bit of a fine line to walk to say, I was in charge of everything, but I didn't know about all of these problems. And I think to kind of rebut the futuristic and rosy outlooks that she told investors about, she said, I wanted to convey the impact the company could make and how it could change healthcare. I wanted to talk about what this company could do a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Investors were interested in what kind of change we could make. So again, saying that they all knew this was about the future. They didn't think we were doing this right now. We were talking about what we could maybe accomplish one day. And that is a very stark contrast to everything the investors said, which was they believed all the things that she was talking about could be done in the moment. Theranos had the technology. It wasn't talking about projections, maybe a year, 5 year, 10 years from now down the line. And with that, the defense rests. They're not bringing forth any more witnesses. We're not going to hear any more testimony. The next thing that's going to happen are the closing statements and jury instruction before jury deliberation. And like I said, I believe the judge said that's happening maybe around December 16th. So stay tuned until then. And like I said before, if you'd like to guess how long the jury is going to deliberate before a verdict, leave a comment below and maybe I'll give you, I don't know, maybe like a candle or a Pushkin painting. By a Pushkin painting, I mean something like this. He created this with some peanut butter over the canvas that he licked. I also make candles for fun sometimes, so if that would be something you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. I will be back with any updates that might occur, and of course, I'll be back when we do have a verdict from the jury, but until then, I hope you guys all have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!